Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned in to Leica Stories, and today we are in conversation with photographer David Patiño. Now, before we get started with this interview, we had some fun in the green room. I don't normally go to the share screen this early, but going through David's website today, and I'm like, I don't know how in the 10 times that I went through your website, I missed this, but I'm going through and David, what am I looking at here?
My boys. Say Graves.
Eight
Brent and
graves.
Brent and Nick, and apparently you know Brent.
Dude, it's like I'm covered in tattoos by Brent. I actually, admittedly, it was a my picture that I did of them, I did a photo shoot of them. It was in a parking garage in Somerville, New Jersey.
Of course.
If that doesn't like just say what kind of shoot it was, Brent was
Yeah,
wearing
man.
his usual black uniform. Nick had the
Yeah.
black uniform on too, and your picture's way more badass.
Oh, that's
I looked
funny.
at this and I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I'm not even gonna
Dude,
look up that picture. I don't even want to show you the picture, Dave. That's how bad it
oh,
is.
see, if they ever call me again to shoot, I'm gonna be like, what if we did like the parking garage in Hillsborough? Like, what if we go back and recreate it, like 15 years later?
Let's do it. Shopping center, nothing like a grocery store parking lot to get a photo shoot going on.
Uh,
Dude, it's such a small world.
Insane.
I'm blown. Like I'm looking at that, and of course I'm like texting Brent, and I'm like, telling him, dude, I'm about to interview Dave, and he's like, oh yeah, super cool. We go way back, and I'm like, yeah, I could tell.
Oh
So
man.
how did that whole thing come about?
I was doing it's funny, I'd heard about them, I kind of knew about them. I used to play a bunch of music and we kind of missed each other musically, and we grew up in different parts of the state and a whole like 35 minutes away from each other. And so but I was doing this video series with a recording studio up in Byram, New Jersey, this guy Rob Freeman, and we were just basically like we would offer like live recordings to bands, and we'd go in and we'd knock out like three songs in like 2 hours, and it was like cheap, and everybody went away happy. And Eight Graves was one of the bands. And remember, I met them, and they're kind of like Nick's real quiet, Brent's like real loud, and they had a drummer at the time. And we did the shoot, and it was cool. And then kind of went away. I sent them the edits. I remember like there was no re-edits. They were like, "Yeah, man, this is awesome, thanks." And I was like, "Oh, cool. These guys are all right," you know.
That's awesome.
And then we did another shoot, and then we did another shoot, and then long story short, we ended up doing a couple of these shoots together, and then I ended up doing some work with Nick by himself for their YouTube page. And then Nick called, or we were in a session one day, and Nick was like, "Dude, we're going on tour. We're trying to hire photographers in every city. We're only doing like 5 or 6 cities. Like, and I'm getting quotes from like $50 to like $1,500." And he's like, "How much should we pay?" And I was like, "Well, don't pay $1,500. Whatever you do, like, get it." I don't know. I was like, honestly, I was like, Get what you can afford. Like, I don't know, call it college. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, do what you can." And on the ride home, I was driving home from Hillsborough or wherever it was down there up to my house, and I was like, "Man, what if I went on tour with them? Like, what if I just went?" And so I got home and I emailed the group and the manager, and I was like, "Hey guys, like, what if I just go with you for these 2 weeks?" And the manager wrote back right away, and he was like, "Man, that's a really nice offer, but like, we can't afford you." And I wrote back and I was like, "Now, what if I just came with you? Like, what if I just came and you didn't have to pay me? I'll fly myself out on miles, but you gotta let me stay with you because I need a place to stay, and you gotta drive me around because I'm not driving myself around, and you can never tell me to put my camera away. Those are the rules." And they wrote back and they were like, "Dude, you're in." And I think it was like a month later, I flew to Los Angeles and I met them there, and we toured for like 2 weeks. We did like a whole bunch of stuff together, and by the end of that tour, we were just like buds. We're
That's
just like,
awesome.
yeah. And from that point on, like if they went somewhere, if they went in the studio or if they did a show, like I was just like, they would call and be like, "Hey man, what if you," and I'd be like, "Yeah," and then they started paying me a little bit too. And like it all like it
Everyone's
just worked
happy.
out. Everyone was happy, and like we ended up doing a ton of stuff together. And it was just like, yeah, they just became really good friends of mine. So
That's awesome. It's like an organic, like everything. It's always great when things just work out and you don't have, there's no ego on either side. It's kind
yeah,
of just like we gelled together.
yeah.
Was there any discussion of like vision, or was it just like I'm here along for the ride. I'm gonna do my thing, you guys do your thing?
Yeah, I remember like, yeah, like every time it's always just been like the stuff we did in the studio was kind of like, yeah, we're in the studio, this is what we do. But once we started like working together, like I remember I flew to Texas with them for 2 weeks. They were in a recording studio down there, and like I showed up with a Leica M5 and one lens, 35 millimeter. And I was like, I'm gonna shoot film for 2 weeks.
No way. You
You
shot
guys are gonna have nothing for social media. I'm just gonna shoot film.
the
And yeah, and they were like, cool, sounds good, man. And I did. I shot nothing but film for 2 weeks. And
No way.
yeah, and I got home and I was like, oh man, I hope something worked.
You come back, you're like, here's 3 photos. That's
Yeah,
how I would have been, stressing out.
exactly. No,
What
it's
were you
beautiful. It's like
what were
it's
you
just
shooting at
weird,
the
man.
time before? Like were you because that's one of the things I love about your work is a lot of music photographers are just music photographers and
Yeah, yeah.
they don't have a body of work outside of that and they don't really have an eye outside of that. But it's like your
Yeah.
work is has a commercial feel, but then you can go in and your music work is not like a commercial photographer's music work. Like there's feeling to it. It's like your
Thanks.
music work is the work of a musician, like that
Yeah.
person who plays in a band but also knows how to wield the camera.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of it. Is I played in a band for a very long time. I played music my whole life up until I was like, I think like 21, and then I got real skittish and nervous, and I was like, I should get a real job. This this touring thing isn't working. Like playing in bands doesn't make money. And my father was a banker, my mother was an insurance woman, and it was just like it went against everything I knew, kind of. And but it was in me, and so I kind of took a break for a while there, and then I started playing music again right around the time I started photographing, actually, because I ended up like managing medical offices in my 20s.
We all had that
You know?
unglamorous start.
Yeah, but it also taught me a lot, and
Mhm.
I got really good in medical, and I ended up as a photographer shooting a ton of pharmaceutical and a ton of patient stuff. And but yeah, like at my career as a photographer, I started off shooting bar mitzvahs and then weddings and then family portraits. And then I remember one year I came home to my wife and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna do weddings anymore. And she was like, yeah, go for it. And I just like the phone rang the next day and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't do that.
No way. Was it just
Yeah.
like, I mean, look, as somebody who I shot a handful, you
Yeah.
don't even have to explain to me. If
Yeah.
you've ever, if you've shot one wedding,
Yeah.
that's enough. That's one
It's
too many.
stressful. It's
It is.
stressful. The money's great or it can be great, and if you get the right client, like it can be wonderful. And I know guys who have like just amazing careers doing it. But like, I was one of those guys who would like sit in the parking lot and be like, "Oh, my stomach hurts. I hope I don't mess up today." Like,
Like,
I
do I
was
have
just
to go in?
nervous. Yeah, do I have to
Yeah.
go in yet? And like it just wasn't for me. And at the time, I was doing a lot of portraiture. I was doing a lot of headshots. For a while there, I was like, I'm just going to be a headshot photographer, right? And then literally this agency. I moved into this town called Marshtown. I opened a studio there on my own, and when I stopped doing weddings and bar mitzvahs and stuff, I like emailed every agency in Marshtown. It was like 30 at the time. And Marshtown's only like 2.8 square miles. So it was kind of weird that there was 30 agencies there, but I just emailed them all. And lo and behold, like three of them were like, "Oh yeah, we've heard about you. Like, yeah, let's go grab a beer or a coffee or whatever." And from there, I built these relationships. And what I realized in that career was like, oh, the agency can be my client. I don't have to get the client. I can just foster this relationship with this. And they were all mid-level. Some of them were really small at that point, agencies, but they had clients that were up and coming or whatever. And I was kind of one of those photographers that was like, I was kind of focused on the job, and the game to me was like getting the paycheck.
Hmm.
The images, the shoot, that's all like a byproduct. Like I became like really heavily invested in business and like being like, I'm going to be the best business photographer I can be. And I remember at the time, like, this is like 2010. Like Chase Jarvis was on YouTube, like screaming from the rooftops, like, your job is to get the most amount of money from the client. That's your only job. The pictures you already know how to do. Like he was like, and I was like, yeah, this guy, yeah, he's so smart. And that's what I did. Like, but at the same time, like, I really loved everything I did. I loved all the work I did, and I got into like product photography. Like this agency called, and they're like, we only work with people that like own machine shops basically and make little parts for spacecraft. And I was like, I can shoot that. And then I did that for like 2 years, and then I got more portrait work, and then I got more pharmaceutical work. And I kind of just went where it took me. Because every time I was like, I'm gonna do this, the phone would ring and be like, hey, we have 100 jobs doing this, and I'd be like, well, I'm gonna do that then. And I think because of that, I just kind of like I learned a lot about everything. And at the time, I was like really big into studio work. I was really big into lighting. Like that was my that was my jam, man. Like you came in, like my whole shtick was like you'd come in and be like, okay, we kind of want it to look like Sunday morning, breakfast, maybe. And I'd be like, okay, cool, black studio, boom, and we'd make it Sunday morning, like, and that was the
Love
vibe.
that.
Like I could pull that out. So, and now I don't own any lights, and now I shoot.
Isn't it wild how like that
It's like
progression?
so wild.
Everyone's natural light
Yeah,
to start, and then they
yeah,
learn lights, and then everything's with lights, and it's like I got to do
yeah,
a 40 light setup, and then
yeah,
you revert back to. I mean, I guess it's just what's natural to you. And if you still do, you still use lights as needed? Is it kind of one of those things, or is it more where you're taking jobs that are more? Have you gotten yourself whittled down to like, I'm only shooting what I want to shoot now. I don't need to be the Dave of 10 years ago. That's like, oh, cool,
yeah,
job over here. I'm gonna do it.
yeah. That's exactly what it is. And part of that was a lot of like self-exploration.
Oh yeah.
It had nothing to do with the cameras or the job or anything like that. The last year of my life has been like wide open and just exploring. And like, I think I identified as David Patiño, the commercial advertising photographer for so long. Like that's who I was. Like if I met you, like I would let you know within 5 minutes that's who I was. I wasn't
Interesting.
gloating about it. I wasn't, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm a photographer. Yeah, this is what I do.
It's like
Like
everything's a brand.
everything was a brand, right? And like, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but it was also like it was, man, it just had such a hold on me. And the second I was able to like release that, and I was just like, oh no, I'm whatever. Like I'm a photographer, I'm a visual artist, I'm a cinematographer, right? Like because like I was always one of those guys that was like I don't do video. Now I'm like, yeah, sure, I do video. Like why not? It's kind of like photography, like
Yeah.
and again, like going back to all the gear and stuff, like part of it was 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. Like I sold my studio, I sold my home. And I don't have a home anymore. I travel full time. My wife and I
Wow.
and our little dog, we have a little tiny motor home and we stay. I'm in an Airbnb in Utah right now.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and in 2 days I'll be in India. And last week I was in Arizona. And so like we just constantly are moving. And I think because of that, I was also forced to pare down the equipment. Like I can only fit in what fits in that truck. And a lot of it is cinema gear right now because I'm
Okay.
working on a true crime show that we're shooting, and so that's the bulk of the work. I have like two Pelican 1510s, and that's my entire photo rig now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like three or four cameras, and when I say three or four, I mean like one of them is like a Leica Mini 2, film camera that I just keep in my pocket,
That's
and like,
awesome. You still shoot a
yeah,
lot of
so
film?
I still shoot a lot of film, a lot of 35 millimeter now. Like I'm really into the snapshot all of a sudden.
That's great.
I'm into just like,
I love that aesthetic. I mean,
yeah,
it's easy. It's
yeah,
it's it's not really dressed up. It's what you see is what you get. I mean, that harkens
yeah.
back to like us growing up to where
Dude, that
that's
was
all we
it,
had was
right?
snapshots.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was
It's
no like,
literally disposable cameras, like in a
yeah,
parking lot, skating with your friends or
yeah. We didn't even know
doing
how to take
stupid
pictures of
shit.
ourselves. Now it's like everyone's just constantly like, I know my angles.
Right.
It's like, no, it's like, no, you just held it up and whoever just
Yeah.
happened to be holding the camera and half the time
That
their
was it.
finger was over the lens.
Of course. And now,
Yeah.
and I think that's what's funny is like, I spent a good 10 or 12 years, shooting very highly specific, written down, this is what we're making today.
Mhm.
In the studio, we're building everything. Um, I shot phase one for a while, which was beautiful. It was amazing, but it's a piece of equipment, like and I don't think I ever really touched the camera. You control the whole damn thing off the computer, and like,
Oh, wow.
and you don't touch it because it wobbles, and it was just like everything was so perfect, that I got to this point where I was like, wow, what an inauthentic life I'm leading. Like everything I'm creating is manufactured and then tweaked again and then tweaked one last time before it goes out to the world. And when I stepped away from that and I started shooting music, I just abandoned all of it, And I remember I was out in Joshua Tree last summer with my wife. She was assisting me, and we were out at like sunrise with this artist, and I had an M11 and I don't know, a lens on it, and I was like, "Can you believe this is the only thing I brought today?"
That's
Like
wild.
that was it. That was my whole kit for the entire 5 day shoot was a M11 with a Noctilux on it.
What brought you to Leica? Did you jump around from a bunch? I mean, when you go to phase one, it's like you skipped a
Yeah,
lot of steps along the way. Most of us, it's like
yeah,
phase one is way down the line. It's like, yeah, I went from
yeah.
a Canon Rebel and worked my way around. How did you get to Leica?
So I shot Canon forever. I shot Canon forever, and I got into high megapixel. I got into like, when they did the 50 megapixel drop, I was like, yeah, I'm on that because I was shooting product, and it was like, cool, I have all this room to work,
Oh
and
yeah.
and at the same time, there used to be a magazine called PDN that was
Oh
based
yeah.
in New York. Yeah, right.
Yep.
Um, okay, so quick side story. So in like, I don't even know, it was probably 2012, 2013 or something. I get this email one morning. I'm like walking into an agency meeting. I get this email as I'm waiting. And it said like, "Hi, I'm Greg Scobletti. I'm the new tech editor for PDN Magazine, and I live 2 miles from you, and I would love to meet with you and see if we could work together." And I was like, "What?" And so I called the dude right away because I was like, "This is fake." And he was like, "Hey man, I'm the tech editor, and I don't know how to shoot. I'm not a photographer. And I saw your work, and maybe we could just send you cameras, and then you could play with them, and then I'll come interview you, and then we'll write articles." So
That's a
for about
sweet
5
deal.
years, yeah, so for about 5 years, I think I touched every camera that hit the market, basically,
No
like
way.
literally. And what happened was I started to play with a lot of them and use them on shoots, and it got me to realize different things and learn different things. And at one point, I went and I bought a Hasselblad, their 50 megapixel, whatever H6 at the time, and I had it for about a month and a half. And phase one came out with the 100 megapixel Trichromatic. And phase one called the magazine. They're like, "Hey, do you want to review it?" And so phase shows up, and they come to my studio at the time to deliver it and teach me how to use it. And I open the door, and it's this guy I know. It's this guy Francis, who I know, who used to be the sales rep for Mamiya, who I met when he was with Mamiya years ago. And he's like, "You?" And I'm like, "You?" Long story short, I test the camera, I fall in love with it, and he basically at the end he's like, "Dude, why are you shooting Hasselblad? You should be shooting phase one." And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, kind of, like literally over
Okay.
lunch, scribbled on a napkin. I still have it. There was this whole price breakdown, and we crossed things off when we negotiated, and in the end, I was like, "Cool, let me just secure the money because I don't have that, and we'll go." And so I bought the phase, and I had it for about like 4 years. And that's when I just kind of came off of the whole like, I don't know if I want to do this big studio stuff anymore. And in the meantime, what happened was, to answer your question, I didn't have a backup camera because I couldn't afford a backup camera.
You already gave up a
I,
leg for that phase one.
dude, I had one camera, and at the time they had Phase had a deal. It was like if you buy the body or the back, they gave you one lens for free, and you could pick whatever lens it was. And
Oh,
so
nice.
I took the most expensive one. I took the 150 macro, which was like $8,000 or something like that. And they were like, "Yep, here you go. It's free." And I shot everything on that lens. And if I needed to be further away, I just backed way the hell up, um, but eventually got to a point where I was like, man, I need a backup. Or like, especially I was doing flyouts. I was like flying out to shoot pharmaceutical gigs and like shoot these, like, I'd go to these, like patients' houses, and I would profile them for the day. And it's like, I should have a backup. And Leica was the only thing that looked close enough to the phase in terms of sharpness and whatnot. And I remember the SL2 had just come out, or it hadn't even come out yet. And I met John Kreidler, who was the US sales rep for Leica at the time. John's no longer with us, but um, John met me and let me hold his SL2 the week before they came out. And I sat and I played with it, and we talked for like 45 minutes. And a week later, I had one. It was like the day before Thanksgiving it showed up. And the more I started shooting it, the more I was like, why do I have this big hunk in phase one? This is cool and small and beautiful and sharp and 50 megapixels. And that seems to be enough for what I'm doing. And that's how I ended up with Leica. And from there, I went to an SL2S, and then I went to another SL2S, and then I sold some. I just kind of weaved around, and now I'm on an M11 and an SL3. Those are my those are my workhorses. The SL3 I kind of use exclusively for like touring and
Okay.
kind of like that stuff. And then the M11 is kind of my portrait camera. And then I have, like I said, I have a Mini 2 that I shoot 35 on, and I've got an M5 from like 1976 or 74 or something like that
That's
that I shoot
awesome.
35 on. Yeah, so and that's all I need really at that point. Like that's it. Like I just became a Leica boy. I became that guy.
You're that guy. Yeah, but it's like, if you've used one, you're gonna
Yeah,
notice. For anybody out there who hasn't used, when you say the Leica look and people look at you
yeah,
like no,
there is.
there's something to the look, the
Yeah.
functionality. I mean, it's a quality system.
If you
It's
hold one, you realize like,
oh
oh, this is
yeah.
going to last me forever. Like this is Yeah, it's
It's
just
like
it's
the
built to
balance of
last.
simplicity without being, it's like does enough. It's not
Yeah,
overly complicated. It's streamlined, but the image quality, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're looking at. And especially coming
yeah,
from a phase one, you got a higher
yeah.
threshold
I
to
know
hit
image
than
quality.
image quality.
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I get it. I get it. Yeah, but it was refreshing to come off of that and to start shooting, you know, smaller format and smaller cameras, and it was cool. Like, I ended up, I was so used to shooting primes at that point on the phase that, like, I ended up buying all primes for the Leica, which was great until I started touring. And it's like, dude, you can't be carrying four lenses around a
Nah.
festival and like trying to change in the pit. And like, it just wasn't working. And like, um, I traded in all the primes in September of last year. And now I have like the 24 to 90 and the 90 to 280, and that's it.
Interesting. So no primes at all.
No, which is really scary because I haven't shot zooms in like, I don't know, 16 years,
I
something like
know.
that. So
Come on,
yeah,
we
but it's
we grew
fun.
up. Zooms were bad. It
All
was
you
like
had,
primes or
but that's
nothing.
all you had, you know? Like,
Yeah, it's like it's like no, you have a Zoom. It's like you were looked at like you were cursing at
yeah.
somebody if
Oh yeah,
you.
you could tell like, oh, that guy's he's still working on it.
He's got a kit lens, nice kit
Yeah,
lens,
you got,
buddy.
oh, that's cool. Was that an 18 to 55? Good for you.
Oh my
Good for you.
god, is that f3.5 or f4 to 5.6?
Well, actually, it's 3.5 to 5.6.
Shoot everything
You know?
zoomed
Yeah.
out. I get that maximum
Yeah.
aperture.
It's so funny
That's
because you go, I think as photographers, we all go through that stage of like, you kind of like look down your nose for a second. And now all of a sudden I'm at this point where I'm like, oh man, what could I do with an 18 to 55? Like, I try
yeah.
to challenge myself. I'm like, oh, what could I do if I only had that? Or like, um, I don't know. I just like,
It's that
it's become
progression. It's
fun
the
again.
same thing as the
Yeah.
lighting. It's like you start
Yeah.
and you're like, and then you go and you buying these primes and you're working up, and then you hit a point where you're like, okay, the gear doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
like if I handed, if I was handed like the absolute worst camera on the market, well, that's still going to be leagues better than what we had 15, 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
Like
Insane,
I
right?
would kill for a camera from, a camera from 10 years ago, I
Yeah.
would have killed for back when I was shooting like a 2 megapixel
Oh, for sure.
point and shoot first digital
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah. And I a lot of people who like, you can see the difference. And like, yeah, sure. If you want to pixel peep and punch into 300%, yeah, I can tell difference in a lot of cameras, but like, that's not the way we look at pictures anymore.
No,
It's
especially, yeah,
not.
it's like
And
now we're looking at pictures on, it's like great.
tiny,
You get a
you know?
nice inch by
Yeah.
2 inch photo on your phone, and that
Yeah.
suffices for a lot of people.
It's interesting. I did a gallery show like maybe 2 years ago, this little gallery up in New York State. And I showed a bunch of like stuff that I shoot on the side, right? And it was all shot on an M11. I think all of it was shot with the 35 Summilux and or Summicron rather. And some of them were big. Like some of them were like I had actually the piece that you use for your for the banner, right? That
Mhm.
that window. Um that was like a 40-inch print that I did. That was shot on an M11, wide open at f2 at 12,000 ISO.
No way.
Like, dude, me from 5 years ago would have shamed myself for printing something that big at that ISO. And yet when it came out, I was like, that's badass.
Beautiful.
That
That's
looks cool.
awesome.
I liked all the weird grainy stuff that happened to it, and it fit the vibe of the room, and it just, I don't know, it just worked. So, I think you just kind of like I said, just go through all these stages, and as long as you are accepting of that, you'll keep growing.
Totally. Where are you
Yeah.
at now? I mean, I thought it was interesting you saying it. It sounded like I was listening to my inner dialogue when you were talking about like, we brand ourselves, and then you hit
Yeah.
this point where it's like, because I'm like, yeah, I was always a street photographer,
Yeah.
and it's like I hated being typecast, and then you get to a certain point, and it's like, well, what if I want to do something else? Now people are gonna think like, would if I'm gonna have to do it black and white and gritty and throw
Yeah.
a bunch of trash in the shot for me to make it work? But I've kind of broadened that out. It's like I'm a photographer. I take pictures of things I like. How has that freedom to just kind of unbrand yourself changed, or has it changed the way you shoot, the way you see, the way you work?
Yeah. I mean, it's opened up every door in the last couple of years, I think. Selling
Do you
the
feel less
studio.
constrained?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I literally like when I tell you I'm like if you had met me 2 years ago, you'd be like, that guy's okay. And now people are like, oh, that guy's pretty laid back. That guy's, like I dress differently, I think differently, I literally like I shoot differently, I approach, because everything was so well planned out in the past. And now it's like, all right, meet me in Joshua Tree and we'll figure it out. Like I'll get there. Like we'll make it happen. Like, and I think part of that is that like I have the knowledge, right? I've been doing this long enough that I know how to turn the dials and push the buttons. That's not that's not what I'm doing anymore. Like now it's a matter of what can I draw out of the subject in front of me? Where can I maneuver myself to get what's in here? Like now I'm at the point where I'm like, I see these things in my head and I'm trying to get them on the back of the camera now.
That's a great
Right?
place to be.
Yeah. And I'm blessed that I'm in a place where I can make money doing that, I can get paid to do that,
Mhm.
and that people trust me to do that. And that, yeah, just that like it is this freedom. And don't get me wrong, like I still have a boss, like I still have to deliver. I still have to, there's times where they go like, I don't really like that one. I'm like, oh, but it's so cool. And they're like, no, we'll take the other one. Like it happens. Like you're never totally free.
Totally, totally. No, there's always someone you got to. Oh, if you want to make money from it, there's always someone
Yeah,
you got to answer.
that's
You know, if,
it.
if you're just out there doing it for the art and you're like, hey, whatever, money's
Yeah,
not cool. I don't need to pay bills or anything. I'm
yeah,
gonna be an artist. Then do what you want. But as
yeah,
long as you're putting your work out there and you're working, yeah, there's someone you always have to answer to,
yeah,
no matter
for
how
sure.
free you are.
For sure. And like it's funny, like my Instagram has like changed and been deleted and reorganized all over the years. And I am the worst at social media. Like I barely like I posted this morning because I knew I was going live today.
Hey.
But like I don't think I posted for like a month prior to that, or whatever. And I just like my Instagram is literally just like that stuff. It's that stuff that I just shoot. It's like, oh, I like the way the sun hit that table over there. You know what I mean? Like it's that. Like I don't need to. I've never landed a job off of Instagram ever. Even when I was showing all my commercial stuff, nobody ever called and was like, "Wow, we really like your Instagram." I've always landed jobs off my website or word of mouth, and so
Interesting.
my website shows my portfolio, and my Instagram just
Mhm.
shows whatever I feel like when I remember to do it. You know,
I love that.
and
It's more like
yeah,
a day in the life of I saw something
yeah,
cool. Here's a snapshot of it. That's where that snapshot
yeah,
comes back into play.
yeah, totally. That's totally
That
it, man.
that's such an interesting take too, because we put so much weight on social media now, where it's like like I don't post either. I think I have like 6, 7, 8 pictures up there. I go completely ham in my stories, and that's probably where everyone's like, "This guy's crazy." But
Yeah,
same thing. It's like
yeah,
I'm not trying to land work on there. That's my space to be me, which I think that perspective is freeing because
yeah,
there's a lot of people where it's like they treat Instagram like a job and it's like, oh, 12 p.m. I got to post.
yeah, man.
I got to do this. And it's like, that's so, and I feel kind of the same as you. Like the less restraints we have, it opens me up as a person. It helps me create, it helps me get in more in the lane that I want to be in as far as the connections I'm making, the work that I'm taking on.
Hmm.
Um, what about personal projects? I know there's a couple projects, the Beards project, the bedroom
Yeah.
project. How did those come about? Were those just purely personal projects or?
So the bedroom project was purely personal. That was pretty early on in my career. I think I shot that in like 2010, maybe
Okay.
2011, 2011. And what I had realized is I was shooting a lot of events at that point and whatnot. And I realized that like I was only taking pictures if I was being paid for it. The camera
Wow.
only came out of the bag if I was going to work. And I worked a lot at that point, right? So the camera didn't come out of the bag when I wasn't working. I was like, that's work. I don't want to do that. I remember I was standing in front of my studio, this little studio in Marshtown at the time in Marshtown, New Jersey, and I was like talking to a buddy of mine. I was like, just need to find something like a project to do that's like just for me and who cares and blah, blah. And it was funny, I wasn't at the time, I hadn't slept in my bedroom in my apartment. I was like sleeping on the couch. I was like not in a good place. And I was just like, I had abandoned my bedroom, which was downstairs from my apartment. And I was just like, and I was like, I think I might shoot some people in my bedroom. And he was like, that's crazy. And I lived in this apartment complex, this little apartment complex with like a bunch of people in their 20s and 30s, basically. And we used to all hang out in the backyard and run a fire pit and, you know, just hang out. And so I kind of said it to them one night and they were like, that's a cool idea. And so I shot like my 5 neighbors first. And and then those first 5 pictures set the tone for everything. And if you look at the gallery on my website, it's actually in chronological order. It's exactly how I shot them.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
That'll be
like
interesting to
actually
look and see like how is there a change in like the comfort level or
I
how
see it. I don't know
how
if
vivid
anybody
you
else
see
would.
it? That'll be interesting. Yeah, now I want to look at it knowing that it's in
Yeah.
chronological order.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's really interesting is I shot those first 5 people, and then I basically put an open call on the internet. I believe it was Facebook and Craigslist at the time, and I was like, free portraits. The only catch was you have to come to me, and you have to lay in my bed.
Dave, that doesn't sound shady at all.
Yeah, it's not shady at all, right? Not at all. Dude, when I tell you I didn't have enough time to take all the pictures, like
No way.
I was flooded. And at first it was like, people I knew in Marshtown, and I had a nice group of friends and they knew people. And so it was a lot of that. It was a lot of people in their 20s and 30s. And then all of a sudden, like after 2 weeks, it started being like families, like
That's
whole families would show,
wild.
or like literally like there's a family in there that, like, I shot both those kids' bar mitzvahs. And I remember the mom called me and she was like, "Yeah, we want a portrait." And I was
That's
like,
wild.
"You're gonna bring the whole family? Cool." And as soon as I started shooting families and kids, it almost like legitimized the project,
Interesting.
and people were like, "Oh, it's not a pervert trying to get us in his bedroom. It's this guy's like working through something. He's making something,
He's
and
making
like
art, real art.
he's making it, yeah, like and I the whole thing was shot with like the whole room became a set. I mean, it was just like I had two lights, one on either side, and basically what I started doing is like I started to play with it and I started to be like, how many different shots can I get out of this room? Like I've got this lighting and I've got this room. Like I enjoyed like setting rules for myself. And then I was like, what can I do? And if you look, like there's a big shelf behind the bed. There's pictures of like a woman laying on top of the shelf, right? Like I got her out of the bed and put her up there. There's shots where I'm on the shelf looking down onto the bed, shooting backwards. I'm
Gotcha.
like, I just started to really work around everything, and it became this thing. But what I would do is I would shoot during the week a little bit. Everybody works though, so but Saturday, Sunday was like go time. We'd
I'm gonna
we'd
pull
book
this up, Dave,
sessions.
while
Yeah,
you
go
while
for it,
you're
man.
talking, because I think this
Please.
is so that people can see
Yeah.
that's all this guy.
Yeah. He just happens to be like 6'4".
That's wild.
Yeah. Um,
So these are
those
the
are like
early
the
ones
first
here.
five
Okay.
shots. Yeah. Those are like I mean, literally, so the dude with the hat,
Okay.
him, and the next one, and the next one, like those people just lived next door to me. Like that dude I played music with, and like that guy I just hung out with, and she lived down the street, you know. I played in a band with her. She was one of my best buds. And then we get into like friend of a friend, you know.
That's so cool
Um,
how it
she
starts to
lived next
spread
to me.
out.
Yeah. What I found really interesting is people would show up, like the girl with the flowers, like she showed up with the flowers and she's like, I want to be photographed with these, and like I was like, okay, cool. Like if you want to do that, yeah. But like it got to the point where like people would show up with, like, I'm not kidding, like suitcases full of clothes.
Oh, hey.
And they'd
With
be like,
those
what do you think? Like
families.
how should, like, there's a guy in a tuxedo, and like they came and they wanted to be dressed and they wanted to be represented as they wanted to be. And I was kind of like, well, who are you? You know? And
The dog
so
there.
yeah, people brought their dogs, and
That's
it was cool. It was
awesome.
just it was fun. But we'd run from like literally like we'd book a session would be 1 hour long. We would book from like 8 a.m. till like kind of midnight on Saturdays and Sundays, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. And like whoever showed up at 8 a.m. would be there at midnight because everybody wanted
No
to see who else was
way.
going to show up. So it got to the point where like my apartment would have like 30 people, and like someone would bring a keg, and this guy would be playing guitar upstairs, and people would just be like, I had this spiral staircase, and people would just be sitting on the spiral staircase watching me shoot.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And it got, just crazy and out of hand. And like I said, like I wasn't in a good place either. Like it's just like, and then I got thrown out of my apartment for shooting it. My landlord, yeah,
No.
the newspaper did like an article on me,
Oh my God.
and I was running a blog at the same time and a Twitter account, and we were posting like videos, and like it became this thing. And like Marstown's kind of a small little city-esque kind of thing, and like the patch was a thing at that point. Like the local patch ran
My
an ad
God,
on me, and like,
yes.
dude, and she literally like sent me this eviction note. She was like, "Yeah, you can't be doing any of that in that apartment."
And if you know Morristown, it's kind of, it's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's cool. It's fun, especially if you're like 32 years old. I think I was like 32 years old. It was like it was heyday, man. It was like this is
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, it was super fun. And then what ended up happening was like, so when I got asked to leave my apartment, which I did, I was like, cool, I'm out. I need to stop doing this. I'm tired. This is, I shot 135 subjects, I think, in like 2 months, 2.5 months. Um, and I left and I moved, and I was like, what do I do with all these photos now? And so my studio was in a big building downstairs. I had a little section, and I went to the management company. I was like, "Hey, you have this empty storefront around the corner. Like, it's been empty for 2 years. Like, can I rent it for a month? I want to put a gallery up in there. I'll paint it. I'll vacuum it. I'll clean it up because it was like an old like law office." And they were like, "We'll get back to you." And they came back to me and they were like, "All right, give us $500." And I'm pretty sure they just
Wow.
like the front desk pocketed it. Like I gave them cash, and I think they were just like, "Cool, yeah, here's the keys. Good luck." Um, and I did. I went and I painted it and I framed and I hung and there was multiple rooms. And so like I printed like people took a lot of behind the scenes photos and stuff. And so like there was a whole room, a whole office that was floor to ceiling 8 by 10 prints of behind the scenes. Like you'd walk in, it was just like overwhelming, like of what went on behind it, because it really became this community, became this environment around the photo. And so I wanted to show that. And then a guy who lived next door to me like had shot all this video on a 5D Mark II, and my girlfriend, now wife, edited it all together into this story. And like everybody just kind of came together. Like people helped me paint and clean this place up, and we brought the bed into the studio because I had nowhere to put it. So we brought the bed in, and like
That's
it was
great.
just this environment. And I had it for 30 days, and I would basically just open the doors like 4 nights a week, and I would stand outside. Like I smoked at the time. I'd stand outside like smoking cigarettes. Like, yeah, you should go in. Like, come on in. And I had a couple of books printed, and that was it, man. It was just like
That's
it was
so
just art for
cool.
the sake of art. There was no, I didn't sell anything. I didn't like, I sold like a bunch of like soft cover books, but like I
Mm.
lost money on the whole deal. I think the whole thing cost me like 7 grand. I was like, but it
At
was
that
awesome.
point, screw
Yeah.
it. It's like, yeah, it's about the experience. And that's early in your career too.
Yeah.
That's a great jump start. I mean, did that kind of spawn anything or did you take that momentum into any other direction?
I did for a while. I did. I really got back into shooting for fun, and
Love
shooting
that.
when I wasn't working and bringing my camera around. And, you know, uh, I think my personality for that period of my life was that though, like I'd come out of it and then I'd feel like, oh, it's a job, and I'd get back into it. And I'd come out of it and I'd get back into it. And that project definitely boosted me out of it for a long time. But yeah, eventually I fell back into the whole like I do this for a living. I'm going to work, and like I still love cameras, but my love became like, well, how can I manipulate the light for my client, as opposed to like what can
Mm.
I do for myself? And so the Beards project was, truth be told, I'm on the phone with phase one. I working for PDN at the time, and the first phase one I ever touched was going to come to me, and I get on the phone with like Denmark, like all the guys in Denmark, and they're like, "So what are you going to do with our camera?" That's their first question. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to take portraits with it," and they're like, "Oh, cool, portraits of what?" And yeah, there's like freeze frame. I'm like,
You're looking
and
around like,
yeah, I
I need
literally
an
was like,
idea. I need an idea.
and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to shoot guys with beards," and they were like, "Oh, that's so cool."
You're like, yeah, we got him.
And I'm like making it up on the spot. I'm like, yeah, I was like, I think it's gonna be like, I was like, everybody always shoots beards like real dark and moody. And I was like, I'm gonna do it with like color and just, and I eventually hung up the phone with them and the camera came, and this idea came to me like, I didn't have a lot of time with it. So I only had like, I think a week and a half. So that's why there's only like eight or 10 photos in the series. But like, I wanted them to look like they walked downstairs on Christmas morning. Like that's what I told everybody. Like, that's the face I want you to make. And that's what that gallery is. That's like, it's these guys with really good beards who just were willing to be silly for a minute and not be the normal beard portrait.
I love it. It is. And they all, it's like everyone understood the assignment.
Yeah. And I'm dude, like each session was like probably 45 minutes to an hour. At that time, I had a really big studio. I had like a 3,000 square foot warehouse with a 40-foot cyc wall and a kegerator. And so we would like come in and drink a beer, hang out, and then I would like get them in the seat. And of course, they didn't want to make these faces, but that guy's amazing. Like,
The
just look
face
at
makes it. Like,
that. Yeah.
because it's like we're so used to seeing contrived portraiture
Yeah.
where it's like give me the serious look or give me the
Yeah.
smile and everything just ends up looking like a real estate headshot at the end of the day. Like
Yeah.
these are different.
Yeah. It's just something, I don't know. And I didn't even like some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. Same kind of thing. Like,
This
I
guy
think I
looks
posted on
familiar.
that's Neil Vandenkirk.
Neil,
He's a hell of a
that,
photographer.
that's I'm like I was gonna say I'm like that
Yeah.
looks like Neil.
Yeah, Neil's a good
Okay.
buddy of mine. He of course Neil was like, I'm not going to smile. And I was like, dude, this is the whole project,
You
And
got
he
a
was
little
like,
bit of you got a little
he was
something
like, yeah,
there.
he said, I will give you, I'll let my lip turn up. And I was like, good enough, man. He's like, that's how I look on Christmas morning. Yeah.
This is
So it was
awesome.
fun. It was cool. Yeah. It was just a simple lighting setup. Yeah, I left it up for like 2 weeks and just people would come in and we'd shoot and that's it. It was like super fun. Just and I ended up like loving the portraits and I was like, man, I thought it was just gonna be like I thought the magazine would like you just use one of them and that would be it. And instead it just became this thing. And I was like, man, I held on to them. And I was like, wait, this is what it means to do a project. Like you had an idea and you executed it.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
What's probably the most beneficial thing that you've taken away from those two projects in regards to connecting with your subject?
Dude, I mean, that is photography to me. It's just like, what can I get out of you? How can I draw you? The bedroom project was interesting because like I said, like people would show up with like they wanted to be portrayed in a certain light, and I just kind of wanted the way they walked in the door. Like, like a girl would walk in like in her pajamas with a suitcase, and I'd be like, I just want you in your pajamas. Like that's who you are. You were comfortable enough to come here like that. So what I would do is I
Interesting.
would let them be them though. I would let them be them. I would let them go through the outfits. I would let them express and explore who they wanted to be. And we shot it, and like I have beautiful portraits of all those things, but I knew what I wanted to get out of it, which was kind of like I said, like who they were. And so eventually I would weave back around, like, well, like you guys you're all done, like let's just get your outfit back on. Let me just shoot you like that, And there, don't get me wrong, there was times where I used an outfit or a fancy picture or whatever that I didn't use the one, because the vibe just wasn't there. But also just being real and like just not having that facade of like, a lot of guys are like constantly playing with the gear, playing with the lights, right? They're like doing all the stuff and they forget who's in front of them. They forget that there's a person who
Mm,
doesn't understand what you're doing, nor does that person give a heck what you are trying to figure out with your light or whatever. Like, in fact, they're usually uncomfortable at that point. They're like, oh, why is this taking so long? What's wrong?
great
Like,
point.
is this me? Is it not working because it's me? And like, I learned how to talk and just be like fluid and just have a good time, and like the picture is a byproduct that will come, you know, if I can talk with you and have a good time with you, I'll get a picture of you for sure. I know I will. I'll probably
How
get
much
100, but like
how much time do you generally like a typical session, or how long does it generally take you to get comfortable with somebody, or for them to get comfortable with you?
now it's like minutes. Yeah, headshots were a big thing for me because the headshots are real turn and burn, right? Like
Hmm.
I was doing stuff where it'd be like, okay, like the company would call and be like, okay, we have 300 employees and we need to have them all shot in 3 days. And I'd be like, okay, cool. So now we're talking like 5 to 10 minutes per subject, shooting tethered and picking the shot on the spot, right?
Hmm.
I always say to people, I will be your best friend for 8 minutes and then I will forget who you are,
It's
right?
real.
And what I do is whoever walks in the door, if, because you always get the whole like, I hate having my picture taken. And I'd be like, yeah, I feel you. Like you start with that. And they'd be like, I've never had a good picture of me taken. And I'd be like, shit,
That
I guess
sounds
I'm
like
screwed
everyone,
today. Like
everyone
we've
I've
all
ever
been through
taken.
this,
Yeah.
and like, and I'd be like, well, we got to do something today. Like, I would just come to their level and I'd be like, yeah, man, like I hate having my picture taken too. Like, I don't like the way my tooth sticks out and my nose is kind of like, there's all these weird things about myself that I don't like, but like, this is who we are. And I'm gonna make you look awesome. So don't worry about it. Like I'm real good with, like, or someone would say to me like, can you take 20 pounds off? And I'd always be like, oh yeah, I put that lens on already. Like I just make jokes about it. Like I would acknowledge what their fear was and I would sit with it and kind of like make space for it for a minute and then get the job done, because we have to get the job done. And don't get me wrong, there's been a handful of times where it's been like, I don't like any of these,
Mm, it
and
happens.
I was one of those guys who like, honestly, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think you're ever going to like any of them, but we got to pick one. Like I would just say it like it is. I'd be like, yeah. My wife always says to me, like,
Just keep it real.
like I would say stuff to clients and she'd be like, how did you just say that? Like, what, how did you just get away with saying that? Like we were sitting in an event once, a wedding, and the bride came running over and she was like, I'm going to go take my veil off now. And I go, oh, okay, cool. And she was like, don't you want to get a picture of it? And I go, why do you want a picture of your veil being taken off? Like I just kind of said it and I smiled when I did it. And I was like, I could do it if you want. And she goes, you're right, that's so stupid. And she walked away. And my wife was like, why? Like you just told the bride no? And I'm like, but what is the shot? like, what's the picture?
I love
Because
that.
it wasn't like
That's
her mom was going to take it off or her grandma. It was literally like the makeup artist was just going to like take it off. There's 100 pins in there. That's going to be an awkward photo. Like,
dude, I to have that foresight. I mean, number one, to
yeah,
have the balls, like
I think that's
just to
part.
say. I think a lot of a lot of people aren't going to even say it, but it's like
Yeah,
you're actually thinking on the fly in the moment, like,
yeah,
what is this shot going to do for me? Which I think is awesome to be able to think on
yeah,
your feet like that.
yeah. I mean, it's really like what's going to serve the subject best.
Hmm.
Honestly, like what's going to serve the subject best? You know, every subject is different. You know, and if you only have, I mean, dude, I did one time. I think it was I did 90 headshots in 22 minutes, something crazy like that. I mean, I literally had like seconds with everybody
Wow.
as they walked into a meeting. It was like this Pfizer event, and it was just like stand on the white, but it was 3 shots per person. That was it.
Do
And
you
some of
enjoy
them
like the longer, like if you know those portrait sessions where it's like you have an hour to build rapport with somebody, kind of
yeah,
get creative and
totally. That's where I'm at now. Like when, so now, now when I shoot musicians, like I usually get 3 to 5 days with them
oh wow, that's a
somewhere.
lifetime,
And
dude.
it is, but here's the thing. We shoot 3 to 5 music videos and all of the portraits for the next run on the album. So it
Wow.
is a ton of work,
So it's all
you
promo
know.
material and
Yeah,
social media stuff. Are you
yeah,
cutting stuff up and you're doing video and stills of everything? You're
yeah.
formatting. Now, when you guys are doing, say you're doing like a promo package like that,
Hmm.
are you shooting? Where are we at now? Are we shooting vertical? Are we still horizontal and crop? How are we? How are we
I
approaching
uh
this?
I shoot horizontal video for everything, and then I either crop a vertical out of it, or you'll see like there's stories on my Instagram where it's like that's not going to crop to vertical, so I just layer it 3 times.
Okay.
Like,
Turn your damn
you know,
phones, people.
yeah, or like, I don't know, like it's harder with touring. Touring's the big one where
Mhm.
people are like they want both, right? Like I did
Yeah.
a tour once where like I shot and the guy was like, "Oh man, we need vertical," and I was like, "Okay, cool," and I started shooting vertical. And then he was like, "Cool, can we do a cut for YouTube too?" And I was like, "No."
Oh,
You
what a
know,
difficult spot.
it's a difficult spot, but like so like I did tour last summer and I was like, I'm on to this now, right? I got an SL3. I can shoot 8K.
Mm,
I just like I literally put the artist in the middle of the frame. I shoot 8K on stage. I shoot my little clips and then I just go and crop afterwards. Because on stage I'm just capturing whatever I can get, right? Like
mhm.
I'm not the lighting's up to someone else. What the singer is doing is up to her or him. Like nothing's in my control. And
Yeah.
so at that point, I'm like, okay, cool. If I can get a good angle on them and get enough space top and bottom, I mean, 8K I can cut. I mean, first of
Yeah.
all, the vertical,
And
they're
you have
coming down to
enough
1080. Like,
latitude to reframe.
exactly. I can do whatever I want after the fact, like, and I can
Mhm.
pretty much do it with 4K too. The 8K was just kind of like super fun because it was like, oh, I can have a lot of stuff here, and I can zoom
Okay.
in. I can do, because again, it's like we're doing these really small deliverables, so I can get away with a lot that I wouldn't be able to get
Totally.
away with if we were shooting just for YouTube or just for TV or whatever it is. So, I find that to be like a little refreshing. It's a game that I get to play. Like, how can I get the best out of this? But yeah, when it comes to like doing like proper music videos and stuff, that's we're shooting horizontal and we're keeping it that way, and we'll crop where we need to.
I love that.
Yeah,
It's such
yeah,
like a it's such a tricky time now with that where it's like now you
yeah,
have people mounting their cell phones just to get that vertical like hey, I'll just take a
yeah.
cell phone video of, the vertical Instagram story stuff and then
Dude, I was at I was backstage at Download Fest in the UK last year, and when you do a festival, like they in the morning they'll set all the drum risers backstage, and everybody just comes and builds their drum set, and then they just literally roll them out, right? And then they roll them out the other way when it's time for you to go on stage. And so I'm sitting there with my buddy, and he's setting his drums up, and I'm kind of like taking some pictures and just kind of hanging out. And the drummer next to me is setting up, and all of a sudden this guy walks up with a camera bag and a camera, and the band next to me, and they were like, "Oh, you're the guy we hired for the," and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm so and so," and they were like, "Cool, cool," and they started talking to him, and he was like, "So, like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to be? Like, can I be on stage? Can I be off stage?" And the singer looks at me, and he's like, "Oh, just be on stage the entire time. Be right next to me, be right next to all of us. Shoot everything vertical, and don't ever stop." And I was like, "What?" Right? And I could see the kid go. He goes, "Well, what if I have to change my lens?" And the singer goes, "Why would you change your lens?"
oh, man.
And my heart sunk for the kid because you knew he was like, he thought he was gonna like, he thought he had this job, and instead it was just like dude, we just keep rolling. We don't care what you do, just keep rolling. We'll
It's
cut it up later. And I get it. Like there's something to that. Like if you're an online band, if you're an Instagram band or a TikTok band or whatever, like yeah, you need that. You need 30 minutes of uninterrupted vertical video so you can cut 100 videos next week. You got to feed the machine, right? Like I get it.
mm,
I just don't want to work with people like that, so I don't. And I think that's part of it is like I now pick and choose my clients, and I have for a very long time now. Like I got to the point where I wasn't afraid to lose a paycheck because I knew another one will come. I could say no to someone because I don't know whether it's like faith in the universe or I don't know. I'm at that point in my career. I don't know what it is, but like I knew that like if I said no to this phone call, the phone would ring again, you know. And so I started to just believe in that, really lean into that. And then there were months where I couldn't pay my rent. Yeah, of course. Like,
it's
but
the ebbs and flows that
yeah,
freelance
yeah, but you
like.
just got to go with it. You just get
Yeah,
it. And so yeah, I just now I kind of I'm very blessed to work with clients who trust me to execute. And there's a lot of like literally like I just did like 3 music videos for this band and there was no edits on them.
no
And I was just
way.
like even I was like, there's stuff I want to change after watching it. Like I'm just blessed to have that. And the label was like, that's great. Sounds good. Thank you.
And is that just from you taking the right jobs where
I think
people that are
so.
just
It's finding the right people. It's like
yeah,
finding that, building that trust and honestly, like it's building those relationships. Like I reach out to clients when I'm not working for them. Hey man, how's it going? Like they're friends of mine. I make sure that my clients are friends of mine and that I can have that rapport with them. There's this indie label, record label in Southern California that I work with. And like, you know, the guy who owns it he's an industry veteran. He's been around forever and he knows his stuff. And he'll call me and he'll be like, "Hey man, where are you?" And I'll be like, "I'm in Prague. Where are you?" And he'll be like, "Oh, I'm in Florence." And then we just have this like conversation. And where are you next week? I'll be like, "I'm in the States." He's like, "Oh, I'm back home too." And like I just find a connection with it's the same thing as taking pictures. Like having clients and taking pictures, same thing. Like I just make a connection with them and I find that connection. And then I also generally actually like them as people. Like there's very few people that I photograph that I don't like. I find the thing to like about them and I like it,
that's
you know?
awesome. Perspective, man. And
Yeah.
and that and when you start building out that network like that, the people that you're adding from them, it's like, I'm cool with this person. I gel with this person. I'm seeing the
Yeah.
positive. They're going to introduce me to another person who I'm more than likely going to vibe with. And then you just start building a network where it's like,
Yep.
and we see it in this industry, it's so cyclical. And,
Mhm.
hey, I was with this brand, for the last 5 years, and now I'm with this brand. And hey, we know this guy, and I'm cool with him. And it's like that's how you spread your network out, and
Yeah.
it gets easier and easier as the years go on if you build your network the
Yeah.
right way.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite things to do, like, and I'll do it when I'm like on a plane or like backstage or sitting here, right, in Utah. Like I'll be like, how did I get here? What brought me right here to this moment? And I actually did this last year. I was in Europe and I've never been out of the country until I was like 40 years old. And all of a sudden, like I've been everywhere. And I was sitting backstage somewhere in Europe and I was like, how did I get here? Right. And I started going back. Well, I met him through him. Actually, I met this guy through Eight Graves. And I met
That's
Eight
great.
Graves through this guy. And I started going back. And of course you can go back to your birth if you want doing that. But I kept going back and I was like, all of a sudden it just made me appreciate all those people who had been in my life and all those moments that brought me to right there. And like it's one of my favorite games. Like, how did I get here? Oh, right. Because you took that stupid phone call that you didn't want to, shooting whatever that led you to all of this, like, and that's remarkable. I mean, like, I used to shoot all the keyboards for Casio.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I got that job because I rented my studio out to another production company that happened to have a Casio shoot. And
Wow.
I helped the guys had a problem and I gave them a screwdriver and then we started chatting and then they ended up hanging out afterwards and we started talking. And then 2 years later, he called and was like, "Hey man, do you want to shoot this thing?" And I was like, "Yes."
That's
And we
awesome.
kept in touch and that's yeah, that's you never know where the next gig is going to come from. And I think that's the most important thing is like don't discount those little phone calls or those little interactions or because you never know when a wedding or a headshot or whatever is going to lead you to what you really want to shoot, or that opportunity to do that. So
Priceless
Yeah,
advice. We're gonna roll with some images here. I was like,
cool.
I knew it was like, man, we were gonna have such a good conversation. We showed some images, but I do want to show because we did talk about it earlier, just the breadth of your portfolio. It's like you got a lot of stuff. So we'll kind of cycle through some of these if you want to stop me on
Cool.
any. And I just think
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
such a good. Here's the one you were talking about earlier.
yeah. Yeah, this is I shot this during sound check. This is the Beachland Ballroom in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a little club that's been there for a million years. I believe those are the original curtains probably and wood paneling but it's I was actually like shooting the sound check just for the heck of it. I was standing in the middle of the room and I just turned to my left and that was it. And I had my M11 with a 35 and I just picked it up and I think I shot like 2 frames and that was the second one.
And you said this one was ISO. Was this one 12,000?
12,500. If you look
Woo.
at the top right corner, you can see it.
Yeah. But it
But
looks
who
so
cares?
good. And that's
Yeah, it
kind of
looks
the
so
stuff
good.
that, yeah, on print
Thanks,
especially.
Leica.
That's a
For real.
testament to
Like,
the
yeah, this is on tour. This is the band Enter Shikari out of the UK. That's their singer Rao. And again, like live stuff. You have no control over the lighting or what's going to happen or where they're going to go. This was in Chicago. There was about 20 photographers in the pit that night, and there was only room for about 16 probably. It was a really rough night and the crowd was coming over the top and we kept getting hit in the head and I was on tour with them at the time, so I was able to stay the whole show, thank God. Because once everything kind of cleared out, I only had to fight the people coming over the barrier. But there was just this moment and I just happened to be in the right spot. And this was like their lighting was they have such a crazy light show and it's so overpowering that like honestly, like half the images from the show look like that. Because everything is
wow.
so backlit and so crazy. And you're like, but
You got to
man,
work with what you got to work with.
what a vibe, right? That's it, and like that's the vibe of that show. That's how they look. That's how that show looks.
That's awesome. And your colors,
Um,
man, it's like a lot of these images that I'm looking through, it's like
yeah.
it's just the colors are so punchy and you command color so well and the
Thanks,
contrast
man.
everything, man.
This is a mistake, this whole photo.
No way.
Yeah, this was shot in a studio down in Nashville. This is Soren Hansen, one of the guys I've worked with. And yeah, we were gonna do Soren's from Denmark originally, and we were like, what if we shot projections of Denmark over the top of you and onto the back wall? And so we kind of got some stock photos and we doctored them up in Photoshop, made them look all gritty and weird and kind of stencily. And this was the first shot we actually shot in the studio that day. We put the projection up and again, M11 with a 35, and I picked it up and I clicked it and my shutter speed wasn't right. And so what you're seeing is the scan lines from the projector, right? But I looked at it and I went, oh, and I showed it to him and he was like, whoa. And then the guy from the label was sitting on the seat and we showed it to him and he was like, dude, we're done. Yeah, it was like that ended up being the album cover,
No
you know?
way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's like
So
those happy accidents. And now
dude,
it makes me curious. I mean, how much did you guys shoot? Were you like, hey, I got to get some more
but we
stuff?
shot
And
for another 4 hours there and we did a whole nother day.
wow, and this is the
Because
one
what I
that
do is I also like when I shoot an artist like this, like I want to make sure that they don't have to call me back. Like I give them
mhm,
enough variation on everything. So like we shot in a studio, we shot out and about in Nashville, we shot in his studio. Like we just shot as much as possible. And again, like I had 3 days with him. So we just kind of like lived together and hung out. And sometimes I had my camera and we'd get up at whatever, sunrise and go shoot. But yeah,
that's awesome.
did another Nashville artist. This was actually on set for a music video that we shot. We had rented this. I found a greenhouse in Nashville. Um, that's actually like an Aperture 600 out the back window, high up on a C stand, precariously perched, as I'd like to say. And we finished shooting the music video, and I was like, let's just rip a couple frames while we're here because this is such a cool spot, and this is just one of the frames that we got.
Love that.
Um,
So
yeah,
nicely framed.
thanks,
And
man.
again, color palette, man. Your color palette's
Yeah,
always on.
yeah, and we talked about this one. He was like, he just kept saying, I want everything to be earthy. I want it to be earthy. I want it to be earthy. I want it to be subdued. And cool, I can get down with that. This is like my favorite photo right now, and has been for like a year.
I love this.
My wife actually just got that water tower tattooed on her arm.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, that is my wife in the photo.
Okay.
This is actually a still from a Goo Goo Dolls video that I shot last year. Um,
Awesome.
I say video, it's actually a slideshow of 305 black and white photos. I got the call to do the video. I pitched them on an idea, and the manager called me back, and he was like, "Dude, the band's on their way to Australia. The single's coming out in 4 weeks, and I just need a cool visual, and you can't have them in the video." And I was like, "Dude, you're killing me! Like, how am I supposed to make a music video, right, for the Goo Goo Dolls without the Goo Goo Dolls? Like, it doesn't work." And we went back and forth. And as I was hanging up the phone, I was looking at the cover art, and the cover art was this girl with a mirror in front of her face, a round mirror. And I was like, he's like, we said goodbye, and I was like, "Hey, real quick, do you want to like play off the cover art?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, whatever you want." And we hung up, and I was like, we were in New Jersey at the time, and we were about to leave to drive cross country. And I was like, it just started going. I was like, what if we bought a mirror? Okay, and what if I have my wife with me? Because we live in this little RV together and we're driving together. And what if we had this outfit that she wore? And what if it was like a look back on a relationship? The whole song was kind of about like, you never really knew the person you were with. And so I was like, what if we shot it across the country as if like it was this expansive relationship that lasted for a long time? And it was all these little snapshots of it. And you never really knew who
So
that person
cool.
was. And so we would literally we shot the whole video in 5 days, 305 photos in 5 days, between Oklahoma and San Diego. And this was in Texas, in Britain, Texas, I believe it is. It's a famous water tower. It's right off of Route 66 there. And we literally just like pulled the whole rig up on the side of the highway and hopped out. And it'd be like, okay, put the outfit on. Like we just had this outfit hanging up in the back, and she would like throw it on, and we'd run out, and it was like 40-mile-an-hour winds and like probably 17 degrees out. And I
Wow.
shot the whole video on an M11 with a Noctilux wide open. And
Uh,
it's actually the only way I shoot my Noctilux. It's like taped off.
that's
And yeah, I mean, if you're gonna buy a Noctilux, like use
why.
it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
why stop it out?
yeah. And so it's just, I don't know, it's just like beautiful, dreamy shot. And it's like halfway through the video it pops up, but um yeah, there's just something about it. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's got all the stuff.
No, it does. And that's a perfect spot to kind of wrap this whole thing. Because
Yeah, man.
when I saw that image, I'm so glad that the story was what it was. Because I'm like, I was so hoping it wasn't just gonna be like, yeah, this was an outtake from, because I saw it and I'm like, I want to know. And this is the beautiful thing about getting to talk to artists about their work is the pictures don't always say 1,000 words. You need
Yeah,
the artist to kind of fill in the gaps, and
yeah.
something like that. It's like you never would have gotten any of that context without talking to you and
Right.
talking about the whole music video. And it's like even the
Yeah,
context of like, hey, you got to do, they're on their way to Australia. They're not going to be in, just everything that goes into
yeah,
it. And the obviously the meaning of the relationship and the album playing into just you and your wife's relationship. And
yeah,
I don't know, it's so cool. The whole thing is kind of
yeah.
meta and in this real interesting way.
Yeah, man. Just gotta go with the flow, Don't resist.
Lean into it, man. I love it. And
That's
it's
it. Lean
kind of
into it.
seems like that's your whole career has just been following your own intuitions, your own instincts, what's making you happy, and not kind
Yeah.
of listening to anything else than what's going on up here, what you
Yeah.
want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think especially now, I think I finally got I stopped gripping so tight. I was like really holding on to all of it so tightly. Like, I need to be this. I need to be more of this. I need to be more of this. And then it was like, just be this. Like, just be it. You know, that's
I
all you need
love
to do.
that.
Just wake up and go.
That's it, dude. Such great advice, David. This was awesome, man. I'm gonna have to re-continue this conversation at a later time because
Yeah,
there's
man.
so much more there. And you got to keep me posted on the true crime thing you
For
got
sure.
going on there. I'd love to see that
For
finished
sure.
product. But dude, this was awesome. So huge thank you, dude, for taking the time out to talk. And of course,
Thank you.
huge thank you to Leica for making this happen. Rest in peace, Kreidler. Kreidler really,
Yeah, man. I
such a
miss
good
that guy.
dude and so many good connections. Whenever anybody comes to me through, an extension of Kreidler, it's like, I already know Kreidler
He
doesn't
had
didn't
it,
mess with
man.
anybody that wasn't solid.
Now, what,
So
like, just real quick, like, Kreidler was like, he believed in the art so much. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and he was willing to help you achieve that. And I think that's what made him so remarkable. It's like he wasn't just a sales rep,
yeah,
you know?
totally,
So,
totally. He
yeah.
was passionate about it. I always remember I think it was my first time actually using a Leica and Kreidler, it's like he's like very sardonic and dry, and he's got that like little sharp
Totally.
sense of humor, and he's like, and I'm like, dude, I'm like, how come you guys don't put a flip screen on here? Like, how come he's like, and he looks at me like I'm an idiot, and he's like, because it's a Leica. Like, like
That's it.
what do you want? What do you want? Bells and whistles, and you want it to come out and like do circus tricks for you? He's like, it's a Leica. Like, hello, who are you?
That's it, dude.
Oh man. David, this was awesome. Huge thank you to you again. And of
Yeah,
course, all
Ben,
of our
thanks.
viewers out there, thank you guys for tuning in. Leica, you guys are the best for always making this happen. That is it. Another edition of the B&H Event Space. Now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
See you guys.
Later.